Okay, so we already know that 16, we already know that 54, we already know that this 54 is going to be a 3 root 6, so I'm going to change. We know that this is 3 root 6, so I'm going to put that to the side. We don't need to build a cake again for that. Let's go ahead and build a cake for the 16. So build a cake for 16. So I have 16. We're going to divide that by 2. Keep dividing it by 2 until you get a candle at the top. We could have multiplied 16 by 54 and made a really tall cake, but since we already made our cake for 54, there's no need to make it a second time for 54. So 2 goes into 8 4 times, 2 goes into 4 2 times, and 2 goes into 2 1 time. So that means that I'm going to add some numbers outside with this 3. And outside with this 3, I'm going to add a pair of 2s. So I have a 3. And then I also have a pair of 2s. That's also on the outside. All right, so pick up your calculators and multiply these together. Take 3 times 2 times 2. So 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 times 2 is 12. So my final answer would be 12 root 6. All right, go ahead, take out your notes. And now we're going to talk about variables. So go to page 17 in your note packet. All right, so now we have letters underneath the square root. How do we do with letters? But the first thing we're going to do is that everything underneath is its own separate term. So what I really have here is the square root of 50. And then I have a squared. And I have b cubed. And I have c to the 5th. All right, so just like always, go ahead and build your cake with 50. So with numbers, we still build our cakes. Go ahead and build your cake with 50. Keep dividing it until you get your candle at the top. So the first number we're going to divide it by is what? Because 50 is even, we're going to divide 50 by 2. Let's divide it by 2. So then that gives us 25. All right, 25 can't be divided by 2. It can't be divided by 3. But it can divide by 5. So we have a 5. 5 goes into 25 5 times. And 5 goes into 5 1 time. All right, so anytime you have a pair, it goes outside of the radical. Anytime it doesn't have a pair, it has to stay in the radical. So when I make my radical, I have a pair of 5s that get to come out. I'm going to give myself some space because now I'm going to have other things that are going to come out also. The 2 has to stay. All right, so now let's talk about how do you deal with a variable. So with a variable, we need a pair. So what this means is that I have 2 apples. I have a squared, so that means I have 2 a's. A times a. How many pairs can I make with 2 people? If I have 2 people, how many pairs can I make? 1. There is 1 pair. Is there anybody left out of a pair? So I have 1 pair. So I'm going to put A outside with the 5. Nobody's left out of my pair. If I have 3 bananas, so I have B to the power of 3, so I have 3 bananas, I can make 1 pair. So 1 can come, 1 pair comes out. But notice I have 1 left over that has to go under the hood with the 2. And then for C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can make 1, 2 pairs. So I have C squared that comes out. Is there anything left over that did not have a partner? Yes, and it has to stay. So that would be your answer. So when it's variables, we're looking for pairs. How many pairs can you make? You put that on the outside, and any term that doesn't have a pair has to stay. All right, so let's go ahead and look at 72Q. So we're going to start off by separating it out. So I got a 72 and I have a Q. Numbers, you go ahead and build your cake. Go ahead and build your cake with 72. So build your cake with 72. See how high we can go. So we start off by dividing it by 2. Who reached the candle at the top? All right, so go ahead and build your cake and then we'll go through it together. Show me with your fingers how many layers did you have in your cake. 3, 4, 5, 5, 5, 3. Okay, we got a lot of, okay, let's see what we got. So 2 goes into 72 36 times. 2 goes into 36 18 times. 2 goes into 18 9 times. 3 goes into 9 3 times. And 3 goes into 3 1 time. So I got 5 layers. Let me go ahead and move this over a little bit. Okay, so I have my 5 layers. So what can come out of the cake or out of the radical is a pair of 3s and a pair of 2s. So I have a 3 and I have a 2. And then 1, 2 that has to stay. So right now on the outside, I have a 3 and a 2, and then I have a 2 that had to stay in the house. All right, I only have 1 Q. So do I have enough to make a pair? If I only have 1 person, I can't make a pair. So that Q has to stay underneath the radical with the 2. You need at least 2 people to make a pair. So we have 3 times 2 on the outside, which would be a 6, and a 2 and a Q underneath. And that would be my final answer. Okay. So now we're going to start adding radicals. In order to add 2 radicals, they have to have the same number underneath the radical. So do you see how both of these terms have a 3? That means that they're like terms. So what we're going to do is simply add the term in front. So I have a 5 and a 3. When you add 5 plus 3, what do you get? 8. So I have 8 root 3, and that would be your answer. Same thing with subtraction. As long as it's the same, so we have a 5 and a 5, it's the same, we can subtract the number in front, which will be a 7 minus 2. 7 minus 2 is 5, so you have 5 root 5. But what you cannot do, I want to make sure you understand, is if you had 5 root 3 plus 2 root 5, they're not like terms. You can't add them together. You can't add them because these two numbers are different. It has to be the same number underneath the square root. So it has to have, you have to have the same number under the square root. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and look at example 1 on page 18. So all the numbers that are the same, we're going to add together. So I want you to put a circle around your terms that have the same, that are like terms. So these two would be like terms, so we can add these two together. And I can add these two together because they're like terms. So use, circle the ones, circle your blue terms, put an underline under the yellow terms. So let's start by circling the blue, adding together my blue terms. So that would be a 4, 4, and a negative 2. What is 4 minus 2? 4 minus 2 is 2. So that would be 2 root 5. Now let's look at our yellow terms. I have a positive 3 and a positive 7. A positive 3 and a positive 7 would be a 10 root 7. And that would be your final answer. All right, I want you to try to do the check by yourself. Try to do this check by yourself and circle the right answer. Which answer would you pick? So underline and circle the ones that are like terms. All right, who picked A? B? C? D? Okay. Sounds like most people said it was B, so let's look at it. Let me go ahead and zoom in here. So these two are like terms right here. So we can add those together because they both have a 19. So I'm adding the number in front of the radical. So that would be a 17 and a negative 3. 17 minus 3 is 14. And then these two are like terms because they both have a 6. So that would be negative 11, I'm sorry, not negative 11, negative 14 plus 11, which is a negative 3. So your answer would be B. All right, just a few more and then we'll be ending for today. So our last two are on page 18, our same page. So now we're going to add and subtract. But the difference is that both of these can be simplified. So before we can subtract, notice how they're different. Let's go ahead and see if we can simplify it though. So I want you to build a cake with 75, and then we're also going to build a cake with 48. So let's start off by building our cake with 75. Let's do that off to the side. So 75. We can't divide it by 2, but we can divide it by 3. Go ahead, divide 3 into 75. So 3 into 75, that would be 25. And then we can put a 5 into 25, 5 times, 5 into 5 one time. So we already had a 3 outside, but now I'm going to add to that a pair of 5s. So this pair of 5s is going to come out with that 3. And the 3 that was already there is going to stay. So this is going to stay. So this is going to simplify down to 15 root 3. So let's leave that to the side, and now let's build our cake with 48. So keep dividing it till you get your candle at the top. So 2 goes into 48 24 times. 2 goes into 24 12 times. 2 goes into 12 6 times. 2 goes into 6 3 times. All right, so we got a 5-layer cake here. So for this one, we have our minus, and then I already have a 6 on the outside. But I'm going to add to that up 2 more pairs of 2s. So I'm going to add to that 2 times 2. And I have a 3 that's underneath. So when I bring down my minus sign, pick up your calculator and multiply this together. Take 6 times 2 times 2. And you get 24 root 3. So after we simplify it, notice that they are like terms because now they both have a 3 underneath. So pick up your calculator and subtract. Take 15 minus 24. So your final answer is negative 9 root 3. All right, so let's go ahead and do this last question together. I want you to build a cake with 50. Go ahead and build a cake with 50 and then build a cake with 32. So build your cake with 50 and then build your cake with 32. Go ahead and do those 2 numbers. Okay, so for the 50, how many layers did you have on the cake? Show me with your fingers how many layers. 3 layers? Okay. So 2 goes into 50 25 times. 5 goes into 25 5 times. All right, so what I have here is I already had a negative 11 on the outside. But I'm adding to that a pair of 5. So that'll be negative 11 times 5. And then the square root of 2. So that becomes negative 55 root 2. All right, so now let's build our cake with 32. How many layers did you have for 32? 5, 5. All right, so let's see how many layers we have. So 2 goes into 32 16 times. 2 goes into 16 8 times. 2 goes into 8 4 times. And 2 goes into 4 2 times. So we have a pair of 2s. We have 2 pairs of 2s. So that would be plus. So I already have that 2 on the outside, but I'm adding to that 2 more 2s. And then I have a square root of 2 that has to stay. So bring down your plus sign. Multiply this in your calculator. Take 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Now, are they like terms? Do we have the same number underneath the square root? Yep, so we can go ahead and put that in your calculator. Take negative 55 plus 8. And did you get negative 47? So your final answer would be negative 47 square root of 2. All right, so now let's talk about homework 2. So for the remainder of class, I actually gave you the wrong numbers yesterday. So the numbers that you can do now, so we're not packing up, everybody's working on homework 2. You can actually do all of the front sides, so 1 through 8. Well, you can really do them all. Okay, no you can't. Well, you really can, actually. We've covered everything in homework 3. So use this time to work on all of homework 3. There has been a change. I'm not quite sure if I will be here Thursday or Friday, but as soon as I know, I'll pass that information on to you. So use this time to work on homework 3, and that's it.